12.5 million immigrants passed through Ellis Island. That's 12.5 million stories. Some of them are great stories, some are not so great. 2% would turn back, and they would turn back primarily for health reasons. First and second class passengers were actually examined aboard the ships, the steamers, and they were released when they ported in Manhattan. The third class passengers, of course, had to pass through here. They had to be able to work in the jobs they were trained for. They could not be charged a state. The government wasn't about to take care of these people. Between those doors and the second floor, there were doctors stationed along the way. All they did was observe. If they saw someone breathing heavy, ashy complexion, limping, they yanked them out, sent them over to the hospital for further examination. They could have been in the hospital anywhere from 3 to 4 hours to 18 months, depending on their illnesses. Oh, I suspected mental defect. They put an X on you, they sent you there. That's a psychiatric ward. Get the full flavor of the morgue. If you passed away in the island, there was no one here to claim your body. You wound up here as a specimen. Doctors came from all over the United States because they had seen diseases here they had never seen before. This was the place to learn. There are 2 diseases that I call nuisance diseases because they're extremely contagious. Trachoma. What trachoma is a polyp that develops on the underside of the eyelid. Favus, it's a fungus, and you'll see children with their heads wrapped on the island.
Many guests come to New York, they go to see the Statue of Liberty, and they don't know the story of Ellis Island. And a lot of people don't know what these buildings are, so they think they're a psychiatric hospital, they think it's housing. So when they come in, you can actually tell them the story of where in America set up a world-class healthcare facility to treat Europe's poorest of poor. It's a wonderful story to tell. You know, for people in other countries, they see what America does to preserve this heritage. For people in the United States, they see this important piece of architecture and work that was here, and they ask, why aren't we saving? What are we doing? What can we do to keep these buildings standing, to be able to tell the stories of the men and women who worked here and the men and women who were treated here.
Nancy Davis's father was a psychiatrist stationed on the island, and she lived on the island. She was a child, like 9 or 10 years old, and she actually lived in the doctor's quarters. And I had the opportunity to bring her over there in 2009. And when I brought her into this one room, their living room, she got very emotional because she showed me a photo of her mom and her brother and her sister in that room in front of the fireplace. I think money should be set aside by the government to actually refurbish the space. It needs a lot of work, and I really feel that the government should take the time out because it's a national landmark. It's part of the American history. How many immigrants? 12.5 million immigrants came to Ellis Island. That's a lot of Americans, a lot of future Americans. And I think it's very important to keep that history and to tell people about that history. They should know their roots. They should know where they came from.
You don't want to think you can restore it all at once. You know you're competing with nature. Nature's going to want to take this land back. So what you do is you focus on taking care of it, make sure that any problems that arise, you manage those. And then you start to look at areas where you can kind of raise the needed money and then restore that area. And then you also want to restore things as they once were, but then others you want to keep them where they are today in a kind of a state of arrested decay. Yeah, you want to come here and you don't want to be on a tour of 50, 60 people. You want to be able to see the spaces. And you also want to enjoy the peace and quiet, the solitudes here. When he approached the Park Service about installing his art here, I'm sure it must have been very strange for people to make the choice about allowing him to do his installation. For the most part, everyone loves it. It brings a sense of context to the people here. You see people in the buildings where instead of seeing empty rooms, you see people. You also get a sense that someone modern has been here, so you feel it's a sense of others have explored these spaces and wanted to do something with them. What I thought was wonderful about what he did is he looked at the space and saw how wonderful the space could be used for the purpose of art. And so then he found a permit grant that seemed to work well in that space. So when you stop, you look at it, you start to ask yourself, why did you choose that? What's interesting about this? So you start to look at the faces. Rather than walking through the museum, we see many, many pictures here. They're not every 10 feet, so you can stop and look forward to seeing the next waste. But he will be back in 2017 to install another piece.